The scream of battle echoed throughout the area, people crying as they're being eaten alive by undead. Hundreds, if not thousands of undead were rampaging the kingdom, mercilessly killing civilians, young or old, animals included. At the opposite end was an ongoing battle, the clash intense. They exchanged multiple blows, each attacking and defending, but their stalemate came to an end. Apostle, the Empire's strongest swordsman, ended up losing the fight against the Death Knight, but the Death Knight didn't go unscathed. At least his mask was split in two and fell on the ground. At that moment, something happened to him, a change. His lifeless eyes went back looking human. His body shivers as he looked up to the ruined kingdom. Above, standing on a huge pile of corpses, the Archlich Dorgo happily remarked, saying he has finally brought the cursed empire down to its knees with his own hands. He felt more happy taking the empire down now. The longer the wait, the sweeter the revenge. Now that he has finally accomplished what he set out to do 1,000 years ago, he asked the Empire's Emperor if he can imagine how joyous he is right now. Howard Adel Light, Helios Empire's Emperor, cried out angrily, asking the Lich how dare he massacre all his people. He called the Lich a filthy devil, questioned if hell isn't enough for him. But the Lich didn't give a damn about his words. He asked if he's done talking. Shall they now proceed with the coronation? The Emperor asked him what nonsense is he talking about, why would he be holding a coronation? The Lich seductively told him that he has unified the entire continent for the first time in history, so being called Emperor wouldn't be a bad idea. He then faced his Demon Kings. He told them they've done well, same goes for the Death Knight. He told the Death Knight to bring the Imperial crown to him. The Death Knight did as instructed, took the glowing crown and walked towards the Lich. The Lich complimented him for being his loyal knight, saying he has played the greatest role to conquering the Empire. He then asked the Death Knight how would he like to be rewarded for his great service. The Death Knight didn't reply. Seeing there was no response, the Lich commented, "It seems that was a foolish question since he's still his slave. Serving him should be his greatest reward." Surprisingly, the Death Knight threw the crown at the Lich, then struck at the Lich with his sword, in the process thereby destroying the crown. The Demon Kings were shocked, but the Lich was unscathed. He was fast enough to shield himself. The Demon Kings immediately went to protect their master against the rebel. The Lich tried catching his breath. He had no idea how the Death Knight was able to harm him when he had his defense on. He asked the Death Knight what the hell is he doing. He never gave him the order to attack him. The Death Knight spoke. Finally, he's moving by his own will. The Lich questioned what is he talking about. He erased his consciousness completely. The Death Knight told him yes, it only looked that way. The truth is he never really disappeared. He was watching everything while he was trapped inside his own body. The Lich was surprised. He said truly, the Death Knight is his greatest masterpiece, so for his achievements, he'll allow him to vent his anger just this once, only until he finds a way to take control. He then sent out the Demon Kings to take him down. But to the Lich's surprise, the Death Knight took them out in a single strike. In that case, he summoned thousands of undead and commanded them to attack the Death Knight. The Death Knight stood confident. With a calm tone, he told the undead to stop. They should all surrender. And so, all the undead exploded to dust. The Lich shivered. He couldn't believe his eyes. He realized he has created a monster equal to the gods. Pretentiously, he told the Death Knight that he knows he's furious. He understands. He'd also feel the same if he was the one. In his mind, he was saying the Death Knight shouldn't think he has won. Even if his body is destroyed, he'll just transfer his soul to another vessel and regain control of the Death Knight. The Death Knight raised his sword, then told the Lich that for all those long years he was trapped inside, he thought of nothing else other than to kill him. He charged up his body with mana, said to the Lich that in order to kill him, he created a sword technique that severs even the soul. The Lich didn't believe it. He thought there's no way such a technique could exist, but he realized the strike coming at him was dangerous, so he decided to dodge. Before he could leap back, the strike passed through him. For a moment nothing happened, so he laughed, saying of course there's no way such a technique would exist. But then, he coughed out something, probably his soul, up into the sky and exploded, and only his skull survived the explosion. The Death Knight walked closer, raised his leg and stepped on the skull, telling the Lich to go to hell. The Emperor, surprised, wondered what is going on. The Death Knight went on his knees. Sad, he murmured out, finally it's over. He decided to do one last thing. He needed to apologize to his family, even if he can only meet them in death. He wanted to say he's sorry. He then pierced his sword through his stomach and died. But then, he started hearing a voice, someone calling his name, Damien. He recognized the voice to be that of Louise. He was happy that he's getting to see her before falling into hell. As he opened his eyes fully, he was surprised. He asked her why does she look so young. She chuckled, took his words as a compliment. She asked him if he's trying to get on her good side before their father scold him again. "All right," she remarked, saying he can count on her, his big sis. It might rain soon, so he better hurry inside. The Death Knight, now Damien. He was surprised to see the mansion since he definitely destroyed the mansion with his own hands. He thought he was dreaming, or was everything else the dream? He saw a tree branch on the ground, so he picked it up to find out if he's dreaming or not. He stood in front of a rock, pointing his hand forward with the stick. He swiftly struck at the rock. He was surprised. He grinned happily, saying, "This is insane." A hole pierced through the rock and it shattered completely. He laughed subtly, then loudly, and psychotically. He then stopped. It began raining, now tears dripping down his eyes, covered by the rain, as he realized that he isn't dreaming. He has really returned to the past. Damien has a talent, the talent of sullying his family's honor and stomping all over his family's future. In his past life, when his father couldn't take his shit no more, he angrily scolded him. He had committed so much shit. His father asked just how much more does their family's honor need to be tarnished. Not just his father, even his brother scolded him days later for hitting the young master of Lion Blue March. Now because of him, their sister is getting dragged to that dirty roughneck. His mother would cry all the time. Now she's crying because he borrowed money with the family's land as collateral. He had too many talents. Talent of getting his household property taken away. As a result, because of that talent, he was banished from the family. As he was about leaving, his sister gave him a pouch of money, saying he should take it. He has to be happy. Even though her life was ruined because of him, she still cared about him. He took the money and ran. The day he ran out, as if escaping the family, he understood what guilt and shame was for the first time. Now back to the present, Damien wondered how did he come back to the past. Though he did apologize to his family, he never actually expected to come back to the past. He looked up, questioning if his regression was a divine miracle. He looked at his shivering hands. Just as he thought at this time, it was tough to even use such a technique. The technique wave breaking is a technique that amplifies the impact of a blow by several fold. He obtained the technique after killing the knight called Castle Wall Destroyer. He got distracted as his servant walked up to him. The guy was breathing heavily. He tried recalling the guy's name, Victor. Victor told him Lady Louise asked him to return, so why is he still here? The patriarch is absolutely furious. Damien asked what did he do this time around. Damien got to the Haxon Viscounty. What welcomed him was a sword strike sent at him, but he dodged it. His father, furious, stared at him angrily, but his mother and sister held him, told him to calm down. His father furiously told him he has truly gone insane for causing a commotion at a bar and getting kicked out. Damien sighed, realizing he had returned to this moment in time. His father told his wife and daughter to let go of him. He will break Damien's skull today. Damien was speechless. He wondered how long has it been since he got scolded by his father, and his mother and sister. Paul Osborne Haxon, Marilda Haxon, and Louise Haxon. He really missed it so much. He shivered slightly, crying, which surprised his family. His father was also worried, but he decided to play tough. He cleared his throat. He asked Damien what excuses does he have this time. If he has a mouth, he should speak. But Damien told him he had none. His father was surprised he had no excuse this time around. He told Damien it's impossible. Him who was always pathetic with his excuses and defense. Damien told him he was aware, but hearing him say it hurts. He admitted to sullying the honor of the Haxon Viscounty with his mistake. It is completely his fault with no room for excuses. His father exhaled, told him his mouth sure is alive. Does he think he'd let it slide like that? But then, Damien bowed politely. He told his father he would make up for it. He would fix the mistakes he had made. Afterwards, he will be punished properly when he returns. As he left, his family was speechless and surprised. His father asked if Damien hurt his head after getting beaten up too much the last time. Now Merchant City Landwork, Victor worriedly told Damien they have arrived. He stuttered. He asked Damien if he would really go in. There are rumors that the syndicate supports them. He's worried something bad might happen. Damien told him to go back first if he's worried. Victor told him he can't. There's no way he can escape by himself. Of course it would be better if they escaped together. Damien told him not to worry. He will sincerely apologize to the owner so nothing can happen. He will make up for what he did properly. Damien walked forward, said to himself that he doesn't know how he came back to the past, but if a god is giving him another chance, he cannot hurt his family again. He walked towards the guards. One of them asked him why is he back. They thought they warned him not to show his face a second time. Damien didn't remember well since it's been so long, but the guys sure seemed strangely familiar. Damien told them he wants to apologize to the owner because of what he did last time. The guys went speechless. The other guy laughed, saying Damien is acting all respectable because he's a noble, while the one peeling apple told him he'd tell the boss. He then commented, saying it's unexpected. He heard Damien was the roughneck eldest son of a shitty family, but it seems like he's better than he thought. The new guy then commented, saying he heard that the lady of the family is a rare beauty. The other guy was interested. He told Damien he never expected there to be something useful in his family. With his disgusting expression, he told Damien that he suddenly wants to accept his apology. He'd accept it if he introduced his pretty sister to him. Damien sighed at how hard pretending was. He swiftly took the guy's dagger, which the guy never expected. While playing with the dagger, Damien told them he thought he could just apologize in return, but it seems like he overestimated himself. Then, swiftly, he chopped off the guy's hand. At first the guy didn't know what happened, but as soon as blood gushed out he screamed in pain. Damien told him he'd show him properly what the Haxon Viscounty's roughneck oldest son is truly like. Victor, who was watching the scene, cried. He thought Damien was going to make things right, but he made it worse. Hearing the guy scream, people rushed over to go see who's fighting. The other guy scolded, pointed his sword at Damien. He asked Damien if he even knows who they are for him to attack them. Damien told him he doesn't care who he is. He should fight instead of talking. The guy voiced out angrily. What he's about to say sounds cheesy as hell, but he should listen up. No one's ever gotten away with messing with them, the Black Snake. Damien didn't speak much, though he finally remembered them. The Black Snake is an organization that benefit expanding their influence in land work around this time in his previous life, and the bar was one of the bars that they've been looking out for. When he complained about their overpriced food, they beat him up and mocked him in front of the crowd. Now that he thinks about it, he's the one who should be receiving an apology. He smirked evilly. The guy asked, what is he smirking about? Anyway, he's not going easy on him just because he's a noble, so he better be prepared. He then went out to attack Damien with the intent to kill, but Damien casually dodged his attack, then offset the guy's balance with his leg, which made the guy fall with his face to the ground. The guy held his nose, trying to make sense of what just happened, but he came to his senses as Damien grabbed his leg. With an overwhelming killing intent, he told the guy that it wouldn't even be enough to kill all of them right here and now, but he'll endure it for the sake of his family. He then cut the guy's leg. The two, busy groaning on the ground, bleeding. Someone then arrived. Who the hell is this bastard? The guy came together with 3 more armed men. Damien never expected there to be more. The guy asked Damien if he is from another organization. Where is he from? Damien nonchalantly told him it's nothing like that. He was just here to apologize. But then he realized he should be the one getting an apology. He has to make a complaint to the owner of this place, so the guy should guide him. The guy told him he's not sure what nonsense he's blabbering about. If he's not willing to tell, then they'll just beat the hell out of him. So he told his men to go get him. They charged out viciously to attack. Damien stood confident. He sighed at how bothersome the situation has gotten. He exhaled, then with a blink of an eye, he struck the 3 guys, their hands flying in air. The guy was shocked. The 3 guys sat on the ground, crying in pain as their hands had been chopped off. Damien was panting. He himself couldn't believe he's panting from just a single movement. He then asked the guy if he wants to continue. The guy, stuttered in fear, told Damien no, he's sorry. He hopes he's willing to forgive them. But Damien wasn't buying his shit, so he chased after the guy and caught him. Now, in the bar, everyone was drinking and enjoying the moment. Then their eyes shifted to the entrance. The guy was brought to the bar by Damien, knife in his neck, but he was already dead. Damien left him to fall. Seeing that someone has been killed, people screamed and ran out of the bar in fear. Damien walked forward as all the nuisance were gone. He looked up. Above was the bar owner, Anderson Holm. The guy asked angrily, what's all this noise? Where did the guards go? Damien, seeing that he's the bar owner, he told him that if he's referring to the guys outside, he has dealt with them. The guy was surprised. He couldn't believe Damien defeated the member of Black Snake. He asked Damien, who is he to make such a mess in someone else's place of business? Damien told him his name is Damien Haxon. The guy asked if he's talking about the Viscounty. Damien replied yes, and he's not here to make a mess. He's simply here to receive an apology from him. The guy had no idea what Damien is talking about. Damien told him the place is too overpriced. He made a complaint, and his men beat him up for it and threw him out. Thanks to that, people considered him a drunkard troublemaker, and because of that, he and his family lost many things too. Anderson had no idea what he's talking about. He asked Damien if he's perhaps talking about honor, but it seems like he's already too old to understand what he's saying. He grinned wildly, saying from what he has heard, "The Haxon Viscounty doesn't even have any more honor to lose." Damien was speechless as he taunts. He then pointed his stick at Damien. He called him a foolish noble. Does he really think that he'd just say sorry if he said that? He should stop with his cheap play and pay for messing up his business. Damien grinned evilly. He told the guy that he was going to forgive him if he offered an apology at once. But if this is how he's willing to play, then so be it. He then jumped up high, using a chair to leap up. Told the guy that he too shall pay for what he did. But then, to his surprise, someone came out of nowhere and struck at him, the force intense. Though Damien blocked it, the energy from the attacker was familiar. Anderson told the person named Ted that he made it just in time. Damien told him to stop surprising. He told Ted that he doesn't think he's someone who should be hired for a place like this, so he should tell him why is a knight in such a place. Just so you guys know, knights, they walk the path of martial arts throughout their lives. There are 3 ranks of knights, assigned based on their skill level. Official knight, apprentice knight, trainee. Official knights are those who are able to freely use aura, cut down mountains with a single strike, and slice through castle walls like paper. They are transcendent beings. Anderson laughed wildly, saying, "That's right. Ted is an apprentice knight who's very close to the boss of Black Knight. So he's as good as dead now." Damien, realizing he is an apprentice knight, remarked that explains the slight aura he felt. Ted was surprised. He had no idea how Damien was able to sense aura when he didn't even materialize it. Damien thought out loud, then said he thinks he understands why such a person works in a place like this. It must be because he got kicked out as an apprentice knight, since he wasn't talented enough to become an official knight. Anderson whispered to Ted, asking how much it would cost for him to take care of Damien. Ted was furious as Damien called him apprentice. He then jumped forward. He told Anderson they'd talk about the price later. He'd first have to rip apart Damien's mouth. He struck at Damien with full force, but Damien dodged it easily. He launched multiple strikes, which were still dodged by Damien. As Damien dodged, he said to himself that Ted is quite skilled for an apprentice knight, though his movements are wide, but his attacks are very sharp. Ted infused his blade with mana, then swung at Damien. Damien leapt back to dodge. He's almost at his limit since he can't get far with a body of his, so he decided he'd later have to focus on enhancing his stamina first. Ted got angry. He told Damien to try dodging this strike. He took a stance, his body covered with mana. Damien realized that Ted is about to use a secret technique. If that's the case, he decided to use an appropriate technique to go against Ted's technique. He recalled in his past life as he talked to the legendary killer, Master of Blade of Death, Phantom Assassin. At that time, Damien told him about Dorgo the Lich, but the Phantom Assassin didn't know who he is. While killing someone, he told Damien that if he were to kill all the humans, there wouldn't be any fun left in the world. That's why he should just shut up and get out of here if he didn't want to die. But the Death Knight Damien didn't flinch. Seeing this, he told Damien with a split personality expression that he still didn't understand. He guessed he'd have to be another one on his kill list. He told Damien that he asked for death, so he shall show him his secret techniques. To him, it's visible. The majority of the human body is made up of water. Once you reach that level, you can slice through humans, even with a wooden sword, like the one he's using. He then activated his secret technique, Blade of Death, and swiftly cut Damien in half. He told Damien's body lying on the ground that he should have just left while he was letting him. But then, to his surprise, Damien stood up. His body began reconstructing. He had no idea how Damien came back to life since he definitely cut him in two. That was when he realized Damien was an undead. Damien then used the guy's skill and sliced him into two with his hand. The guy was surprised. He had no idea how Damien was able to use his secret technique. Now, he used it on Ted, sending him to the afterlife in one strike. Damien said to himself that it's always like this. All of his enemies couldn't believe that he killed them. After he became a Death Knight, he obtained a great ability, which is the ability to absorb his enemies' abilities and skills and make them his own. Seeing Ted dead, Anderson's face was filled with fear. Sometime later, panic-driven, Anderson came to apologize on his knees, his head touching the ground, told Damien he is sorry for disrespecting him. So he decided to offer a monetary consolation to Damien. He asked if those golds would be enough to make up for what he had done. Damien didn't say. He asked Victor, who was hiding, to stop hiding. He should come in and come pack the gold up. While Victor packed the gold and jewelry, he said to himself that he wouldn't believe it if he hadn't seen it himself. He wondered when did Damien learn such sword techniques. As they left with the gold, Anderson and his men both bid Damien farewell. He should take care on his way back. But Anderson wasn't the type to just eat shit without doing anything. He was determined to get back to Damien. He'll talk to the boss of Black Snake and he'd take care of Damien. But then, Damien came back and chopped off his ear using the secret technique, Blade of Death. As Anderson screamed in pain, he told him that the money almost made him forget about the punishment. With a domineering tone, he told Anderson to go tell the Black Snake that if he lays a hand on any of his family, he won't let him get away with it. Anderson cried in pain, still determined not to let Damien go scot-free. As Damien walked away from the scene, he said to himself that he's very well aware that doing this won't wash away his past sins, but in this new life he has got, he won't disappoint his family anymore. Then told Victor they should go home. Now, at Lion Blue March, a guy looked at the mirror blushing. He asked his brother lying down if he had heard the phrase, "Pain always follows love." His brother asked what is he talking about to be making such a serious face? Is he going to battle somewhere or something? The guy replied no, he's going to find love. Now at the Viscount Haken's estate, Damien yawned as he walked in. He said to Victor that it's been a while since he had such a good night's sleep. Victor told him he's jealous. He was so worried about what happened last night that he couldn't sleep a wink. Damien asked him why couldn't he sleep. Didn't everything work out? Though things went a little off from their original goal, they got a hefty reward. More importantly, rumors will spread soon enough about how someone messed with Viscount Haken's eldest son at a tavern and got destroyed. When that happens, people won't take their family lightly anymore. Besides, the public's perception of the good-for-nothing son of the eldest Viscount might also shift a bit. Victor said to himself that he didn't know this about Damien before, but he sure is surprisingly self-aware. Though still worried, he told Damien that all he said is all good and dandy, but what worries him is Black Snake. He roughed up not only their members, but even some of their hired apprentice knights. Damien told him that no matter how bold they are, they wouldn't dare to go against a noble family. Even if they do, he'll stop them, so he shouldn't worry. Victor told him okay. Honestly, even from his perspective, his swordsmanship is far from ordinary, so he asked Damien when did he even learn how to use a sword like that. Damien told him he just trained from time to time, but then his father came running at him vigorously, asking where he had been all day yesterday. Did he cause trouble again? Damien told him not to worry. As he told him, he took care of what he caused. He then told Victor to show his father their earnings. Holy money, his parents remarked. Victor also showed the land deeds. His parents were overjoyed because with the money they can pay the overdue wages. Damien told them he went back to the tavern he was kicked out of and cleared up the misunderstanding. Turns out the math was wrong, so the tavern owner gave him the money as a token of apology. His father asked, is that true? Can he really believe him? Damien replied, of course. His mother told his father it must be true, otherwise, where would he have gotten all the money from? He told his father that he can ask Victor if he doesn't believe him. He winked at Victor, so Victor told his parents that Damien is saying the truth. His parents were happy, but Victor couldn't help but agree that Damien is quite the compulsive liar. Sometime later, Damien was running to increase his stamina. He then stopped, breathing heavily. Even though he didn't move much, he's already out of breath. His body is also slow and weak. He has a lot to do, but he can't do anything in his current state. Still, he brought out something from his pocket. He was thankful that he managed to get it. It was given to him by Anderson, a tonic created by the Alchemy Academy to boost stamina and energy. He told Damien that the Alchemy Academy is an alchemy group specializing in making tonics. Damien remembered them. Their tonics were said to be traded at the same value as gemstones. He grinned at how lucky he is. He drank it. The potent energy flowed through his body. He knew too well that if he wants to get stronger fast, he needs to build up his stamina fast. He has to return to the level he was in his past life. Because a few years from now, the undead the bastard Dorgo created will appear in the world. So before that happens, he was determined to gain the strength to kill him. Only then will he be able to protect his family's happiness. He then started running, determined to kill Dorgo this time for sure. Night reached. In Landwork, Black Snake's hideout. The Black Snake's boss, Cedric Walker, while eating chicken, told his men that Ted is useless now. He was the best man he hired. What a shame. His underling asked him what should they do with Ted. Should they have him treated? Cedric told them to forget it. They should dump him. They should dump him somewhere. He's of no use to them anymore. They can buy anyone if they pay enough. Ted stood up with the aid of his sword. He laughed subtly, asked Cedric if this is how things turned out. Cedric was surprised he still got enough strength to stand up. He then told Ted that he should get treated, and he'd maybe hire him again. Ted was angry. He charged out furiously to attack with his sword, told Cedric to go to hell. but before he could get close, some kind of energy tied up his leg and hand. The person who sent the restraint asked Cedric if Ted can be the first target for their contract. Cedric replied, of course, he wants to see what he's capable of. The person then began mumbling a spell, and then the dark energy around Ted intensified. Ted screamed as he saw mouths and eyes surrounding him. The mouth got close, wide open to subtly chop off his head. Knowing he's fucked, he begged to be spared, but then he was eaten whole, only his boot survived. Cedric closed his nose at how disgusting it was. The man asked if he's satisfied. Cedric replied yes, but next time, he should make it a little cleaner. The person replied understood, then asked what's the next contract. Cedric told him that's actually why he called for him. Someone harmed their organization, but he's a noble, so dealing with him directly is tricky. He smirked evilly and disgustingly, telling the person to just make sure he suffers in some way. The worse the damage dealt, the higher his pay would become. He then gave him advanced payment. The person happily took it, told Cedric to leave the job to him. In the next scene, Damien was in the midst of his usual training routine, intense as always. This time he was lifting an immense weight, 500 kilograms on each side of the weight bar. After several heavy lifts, he dropped the bar with a loud metallic thud and exhaled deeply. His gaze shifted to his arms as he flexed, quietly noting the improvement. The potion had clearly taken effect. His stamina had surged in just a few days, proof that whatever concoction he had consumed was working. Still, something didn't sit right with him. The silence of the past few days had been unsettling. He was certain the Black Snake faction would have made a move by now. Just as he pondered that, a figure appeared in the distance. Without hesitation, Damien assumed the worst. His instincts flared. He was convinced that the Black Snake had arrived. His stance shifted in preparation to attack, and in a sudden burst of force, he lunged forward. His eyes blazed red as his hand clamped around the figure's neck. But the moment he got a clearer look, the truth hit him. This wasn't a Black Snake operative. It was his younger brother, Abel. Shocked, Damien immediately released his grip. Abel crashed to the ground with a painful thud, rubbing his neck and muttering about how much Damien's strength had increased since their last encounter. The hold had nearly crushed his throat. Damien quickly apologized, extending a hand to help Abel up. But Abel hesitated, refusing the gesture. He couldn't easily forgive someone who'd nearly strangled him, even if it was his own brother. He reminded Damien that he wasn't here for an apology. He came after hearing something from their father. According to their father, Damien had visited the tavern and supposedly received an apology. But Abel had since learned that a fight had broken out instead, one that left several people injured. He pressed Damien for the truth, asking whether he had lied to the family. Damien, calm and oddly proud, confirmed it was true. He had taken down everyone involved. Alone. That claim stunned Abel. He shot up to his feet and dismissed the idea outright. Damien couldn't possibly have fought them off without help. He suspected Damien had hired someone, but Damien insisted he had acted alone. Frustrated, Abel warned his brother to stop spreading lies. The rest of the family might fall for it, but he wouldn't be fooled so easily. He reminded Damien of all the trouble he had caused the family, the chaos, the shame, and the countless cleanups that followed. This time Abel warned him to tread carefully. But despite Abel's lecture, Damien casually ruffled his brother's hair and gave a vague nod of agreement, as if brushing off everything. That only made Abel more irritated. He demanded Damien step back and stop acting so uncharacteristically friendly. Something about Damien had changed, and it made Abel uncomfortable. Still wearing a smile, Damien assured him there would be no more trouble, whatever that meant. At that moment, one of the young servants burst into the training grounds, clearly panicked. He called out to the brothers, saying something serious had just occurred. Both Damien and Abel quickly followed. Moments later, they stormed into the guest reception room. Damien threw the door open, only to find Aaron calmly sipping tea in the presence of their parents. The atmosphere was tense. Aaron had clearly been there a while, recounting events to the Viscount. Upon seeing Damien, Aaron casually set down his cup and mentioned that it was perfect timing. He had just been informing the Viscount about what took place at the banquet. Apologies were offered for dropping by unannounced, but he claimed the family had already been informed, so he saw no need for delay. Damien clenched his teeth, silently cursing. Deep inside, he had suspected Aaron might be trouble. But now it was clear. He had messed with the wrong person. And Aaron Lionbloom had clearly come prepared. Aaron, without missing a beat, asked Damien if he remembered what happened at the last social gathering, the one from several days ago. The one where the drinks flowed, laughter echoed, and the air was light. Until it wasn't. The confrontation had only just begun. Damien could no longer hold back. He snapped at Aaron, demanding to know why he would say something so out of line, though the specific insult was never repeated in the room. Aaron responded smoothly, claiming that he meant nothing by it, and apologized if Damien had taken offense, but that only made things worse. Damien's voice rose, his anger boiling over. Aaron had mocked him before, but now he had even gone so far as to insult his eyes, the one part of himself he struggled most to accept. And after all that, Aaron had the nerve to pretend it was harmless? Aaron, feigning innocence, scoffed quietly that Damien must be drunk, and denied ever saying such things. Yet as he leaned in close, he whispered something sharp and deliberate. A challenge masked his curiosity. He asked what Damien would do if he had said it. And that was it. Without hesitation, Damien's fury exploded. He lashed out with a brutal punch, landing square on Aaron's jaw and sending him flying across the room. But Aaron didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he fell with a twisted grin on his face, one that made it clear he had provoked Damien on purpose. This wasn't surprise. This was satisfaction. Damien had given him exactly what he wanted. Now back in the present, Damien's thoughts raced. He should have endured it. He should have held it in. But he hadn't. And now Aaron, a knight in both title and capability, had exactly what he needed. It was no coincidence Aaron had taken that punch without dodging. From the beginning, everything had been staged, a scheme to drag Damien's family into disgrace. Aaron Lionbloom wanted them pinned, and now, seated with the Viscount and Countess, Aaron turned to them with a false humility. He admitted that the story was an embarrassing one, but used it as an opening to reveal something deeper. He confessed that he had admired Lady Louise, the Viscount's eldest daughter, for quite some time. The Viscount immediately sensed danger. He asked what Aaron was implying. Aaron then calmly requested the Viscount's permission to marry Louise. The room froze. Even Abel was stunned. The Countess stared in disbelief, but it was Damien who clenched his fists, rage flooding his expression. So this was it. This was Aaron's true plan, the same tactic he had used in Damien's previous life. Threaten the family's reputation, corner them into compliance. As Damien seethed, Aaron continued his calculated speech. He claimed that if the Viscount agreed to the proposal, then everything that had happened earlier, the disrespect, the incident at the banquet, could be dismissed as a minor family matter. The Lionbloom family would look the other way, but the Viscount rejected it. He stated firmly that Louise already had a fiancé. She was in a committed relationship, and there was no way he could give his daughter to another man, especially one like Aaron. Unshaken, Aaron asked what the Viscount intended to do about the supposed insult his family had suffered. Could House Hagson really bear the consequences of offending the Lionblooms? He warned them to choose, either surrender Louise or prepare to face his family's wrath. The Viscount began to tremble, cold sweat gathered at the base of his neck. The Lionbloom family was one of the most powerful noble lineages in the Applebottom Kingdom. To deny them came with heavy risk. And yet the thought of giving his daughter to a man infamous for both his arrogance and his vices was unthinkable. And then, unexpectedly, Louise entered the room. She stepped forward and calmly declared that she would accept the proposal. Her father's face turned pale. The Viscount cried out, demanding to know what she meant. Abel echoed him, telling her to wait. Their parents would find another solution. Why should she bear the burden of Damien's actions? But Louise, though trembling, stood by her words. There was no other choice. Behind them, Damien lowered his head. The weight of guilt and helplessness carved deep into his expression. Yet Louise, composed despite the pain, assured them she would follow Sir Aaron, for the sake of their family's honor. Aaron, inwardly elated, believed he had won. He rose with satisfaction and praised Louise's wisdom, saying he would send a formal delegation to discuss the marriage arrangements soon. But just as he moved toward her, a figure blocked his path. Damien. Eyes glowing a deep red, Damien stood tall between his sister and her would-be captor. Aaron smirked and placed a hand on Damien's shoulder, asking if he had something to say. Then, with deliberate mockery, he added that perhaps he should now refer to him as brother-in-law. The line had been crossed, and Damien was done playing by their rules. Damien wasn't going to stand by any longer. His thoughts were clouded with rage as he stared at Aaron, a detestable man who had dared to force himself into his sister's life. Deep within, Damien muttered something beneath his breath, too low for anyone to catch. Aaron, smug and condescending, tried to bait him by asking what he had just said, throwing in the mockery of calling him brother-in-law. But he didn't get the answer he expected. Without a second of hesitation, Damien delivered a devastating uppercut straight to Aaron's jaw. The impact echoed through the room. Blood burst from Aaron's mouth as he was lifted off the floor and crashed down hard. Damien didn't hold back. With his fists trembling, he declared that he would never allow someone like Aaron to take his sister away. In his past life, Damien had endured it all in silence. He had swallowed his pride and rage when his sister Louise was married off. He had believed it was his fault, that the family's weakness stemmed from his own failures. But now, those memories returned with a vengeance. He remembered the day clearly, the day the maids told him that Sir Aaron and Lady Louise had returned. It had been so long since he'd seen his sister, and he had rushed toward the entrance with childlike joy, eager to be reunited with her. But that joy was crushed. When he opened the carriage door, what he saw was seared into his soul. Aaron was beating Louise, slapping her, yelling at her, throwing her to the floor like a discarded object. The man sneered at her, accusing her of ingratitude. In his twisted mind, Louise had no right to speak out, not after being married into his so-called superior family. And as she lay bruised on the floor, Aaron only escalated, promising to train her until she never dared disobey him again. Damien in that moment had frozen. Weak and helpless, he could only kneel in the shadows. Guilt tore into him. Because of his weakness, his sister had suffered. He had never forgiven Aaron Lionbloom for that. And now, back in the present, Damien made sure not to repeat the same mistake. Aaron lay sprawled across the floor, bloodied and dazed, knocked out cold. But the aftermath was swift. Aaron's bodyguards stormed into the room, startled by the crash. Their eyes locked on Damien as they demanded to know if he was responsible. Before they could act, Aaron began to stir. But instead of pain, laughter escaped his lips, a twisted, deranged laugh. He was furious, not because he had been hit, but because he had been humiliated twice. He drew his sword with manic energy, declaring that Damien had a death wish. His knights stepped in immediately, trying to defuse the situation. One pleaded with Aaron to let them handle it themselves, while the other warned that they were being watched and that escalation wouldn't serve the family. But Aaron had lost all reason. Without hesitation, he struck one of his own knights and sent him crashing against the wall. He barked at them to step aside as he stormed toward Damien with blazing fury. The tension in the room climbed to a suffocating peak. Louise, witnessing it all, realized that Aaron would stop at nothing. Damien wouldn't be allowed to walk out of that room unharmed. She tried to intervene, raising her voice to plead for restraint, but Damien waved her off with a soft smile. He assured her it was fine. He would take care of it. This time, he wouldn't let her suffer because of him. Damien faced Aaron squarely and proposed a solution. He offered a duel, not with politics or manipulation, but with swords. If Aaron could defeat him, then Damien would submit and accept whatever came next. But if Damien won, then Aaron would drop everything, every insult, every threat, every demand, and walk away. Aaron didn't accept the duel immediately. He questioned the logic behind it, stating that the proposed fight didn't benefit him in any way. After all, Louise had already agreed to the marriage, so what was Damien trying to prove? But Damien wasn't shaken. Instead, he laughed, loud and mocking. He accused Aaron of dodging the issue, questioning whether the so-called knight was afraid of losing. That struck a nerve. Aaron's expression twisted, veins bulging from his temple. Internally, he cursed Damien, calling him an arrogant fool who had gotten lucky with a single hit. And now, that same fool dared to stand toe-to-toe with him. Aaron swore to himself that he would crush Damien during the duel, cripple him if he had to, and once he was done, he would tear Louise away from their family for good. He finally voiced his acceptance. The duel was on. Later that evening, the duel grounds were prepared. The setting sun cast long shadows across the training arena. Damien and Aaron stood face to face. A handful of knights had gathered to witness it, their eyes curious, skeptical, or grim. Off to the side, the Viscountess turned to her husband with concern, asking whether they should stop this madness before it began. But the Viscount, already drained from the day's chaos, simply reasoned that if Damien had this much confidence, then perhaps he had something in mind. If not, there was little anyone could do now but pray. Abel, overhearing this, disagreed silently. He muttered to himself that hoping for a miracle was pointless. Aaron Lionbloom was already a fully qualified knight, a swordsman of elite caliber. Damien, no matter how much he trained, couldn't possibly match that. The signal was given. The duel began. Aaron stepped forward, ready to attack, but paused when he noticed something strange. Damien held no sword. In its place, he pulled out a small metal fork and declared that it would be enough. The spectators were stunned. Even his own family stared in disbelief. It was so ridiculous that the Viscountess briefly wondered who had birthed such a reckless son, though she knew the answer too well. Aaron erupted in laughter. He assumed Damien had gone mad with fear, but that didn't mean he planned to go easy on him. With lightning speed, Aaron launched his first strike. The blade tore through the air with deadly force, strong enough to split a man clean in half, but it didn't land. Damien dodged. Aaron blinked. He had seen the dodge, sharp, clean, precise. He realized immediately that his opponent wasn't panicking. Damien had deliberately evaded the strike with clarity. Furious, Aaron pivoted mid-air and unleashed one of his special techniques, Lion Spear, Fierce Sword, a multi-directional strike capable of overwhelming nearly any opponent. The attack created a whirlwind of force and dust. When the dust cleared, the ground was carved with deep, violent lines, yet Damien remained untouched. Even the Viscount's eyes widened. He couldn't understand how Damien had avoided such a lethal assault. Aaron, however, had seen it all. He gritted his teeth in disbelief. In a split second, Damien had evaded every direction of his lion's roar sword style. He questioned how this was even possible. Damien, meanwhile, stood calm. He was smiling. He knew Aaron was rattled now. His thoughts turned inward. The training he had done after his return was paying off, but more than that, he had long since analyzed every inch of the lion's roar sword techniques, because in his previous life, he had fought someone far stronger. Michael Lionbloom, Aaron's elder brother, and one of the strongest warriors in the entire kingdom. Back then, Damien had faced Michael in a brutal confrontation. Compared to that, Aaron was nothing. But it wasn't over yet. Aaron, now visibly enraged, began gathering energy around his body. He declared that Damien had gotten lucky once, but now he would unleash something no man could dodge. The power he summoned was unmistakable. Aura. Damien immediately recognized it. Dodging that would be far more difficult. As Aaron soared through the air for his next assault, Damien analyzed the situation in a heartbeat. The energy, the stance, the blade path, all of it led to one conclusion. In a case like this, only a sword saint technique would suffice. And then, bang! A violent, sonic burst shattered across the arena as Damien parried the full force of Aaron's aura-infused strike. The duel had now entered a realm none of the onlookers could have anticipated. To the shock of all, Damien had blocked Aaron's aura-infused attack, not with a sword, but with a fork. Aaron froze. His mind couldn't process what he had just witnessed. The power he unleashed should have crushed anything in its path. Yet here was Damien, standing upright with a fork, and now twisting Aaron's sword mid-air like it was nothing. In one fluid motion, Damien unleashed a technique. The signature movement of 10,000 flows returned to origin, and with a sharp thrust, Aaron's sword was flung several meters away. There was no time to breathe. Without hesitation, Damien stepped forward, aiming to finish the duel decisively. He advanced, fork in hand, and struck near Aaron's neck. The impact didn't kill, but it grazed with surgical precision. Aaron collapsed, overwhelmed, clutching his neck and trembling on the floor. His eyes widened in disbelief as fear poured out of his voice. He couldn't understand how the situation had turned so violently against him. All around the arena, silence fell. The knights of House Lionbloom stared in disbelief. Even Damien's own family, including Louise and Abel, were frozen in shock. No one had expected this outcome, least of all the bodyguards who had sworn to protect Aaron. But Damien didn't flinch. He showed no sympathy. Inwardly, he acknowledged that Aaron deserved far worse. Considering what the man had done to Louise in this life and the last, executing him 1,000 times over still wouldn't be enough. But this once, he would endure, for his family's sake. Damien turned and calmly reminded Aaron that the outcome was clear. The duel was decided, and the terms stood. Aaron was to leave their territory immediately, and so the match ended. The next morning, at House Hoxton's dining table, the family sat in uncomfortable silence. The clatter of cutlery was the only sound. It wasn't that no one wanted to speak. It was that no one knew how to. The previous night's duel lingered in every mind like a storm cloud. Eventually, Damien set down his fork and offered a short thanks for the meal. He rose, announcing that he would begin his morning training, and exited quietly through the main door. Still, no one spoke. The silence somehow deepened after his departure. It was the Countess who broke it first. She leaned toward her husband and quietly asked if he wasn't going to question Damien about what happened yesterday. Her voice softened as she pointed out how even Abel looked shaken. The boy was muttering to himself under his breath. Indeed, Abel sat there lost in thought. He kept murmuring that he still couldn't believe what he had seen. Damien, the same brother he once saw as weak, had subdued Aaron Lionbloom with ease. It was as if he had transformed into someone else overnight. The Viscount eventually raised his hand and told them all to stop. For now, they were to act like they knew nothing. He believed that when the time was right, Damien would tell them everything on his own. Still, even he wasn't calm. The Viscount continued eating, but cold sweat had already begun to form on the back of his neck. Internally, he admitted that he was just as curious, terrified even. Damien might be his son, but something about him now felt distant, unfamiliar, powerful in a way he couldn't explain. Meanwhile, Damien had returned to his room. As part of his morning regimen, he secured 10-kilogram sandbags to each leg and began preparing for physical training. Just as he reached for the door, Louise appeared. She had come searching for him. She called out, relieved that he hadn't left yet. Sword in hand, her expression was solemn. She attempted to speak about what happened the day before, but the words caught in her throat. Before she could say more, Damien bowed deeply. He apologized to her without hesitation. He acknowledged that he had acted rashly and placed her in a difficult position. He admitted that he should have apologized sooner and promised that such a thing wouldn't happen again. But Louise gently stopped him. She placed a hand on his shoulder and corrected him. That wasn't why she came. She had come to thank him. Despite what she had said the previous day, she had been afraid. Agreeing to follow Iran had never been something she truly wanted. Deep down, she was terrified. But Damien had stepped up. He had fought for her. And that had meant more than anything. She felt guilty, but she was also relieved and grateful. Hearing those words from her, perhaps for the first time so openly, Damien smiled, and then returned her thanks with his own. He told her that he had always been the one grateful to her. Louise was taken aback. She wasn't sure when that had happened, or why. Damien turned away with a quiet response, telling Louise not to worry. He made it seem like nothing had happened, and as he began walking off for his training, Louise called out again. This time she held something in her hands, a sheathed blade. She handed the sword to Damien. His steps paused when he saw it. Recognition flashed in his eyes. That sword, it was unmistakably their father's one and only treasured blade. Louise confirmed it. Their father had entrusted it to her with instructions to pass it on. He wanted Damien to have it now, for his training. Damien was visibly shaken. He asked again if it was truly for him. Louise affirmed it without hesitation. She explained that although their father, the Viscount of House Huxon, struggled to show it, his concern and love for Damien ran deeper than words could express. He simply had his own way of showing it, and this sword was proof. To lighten the mood, Louise adjusted her expression, mimicking their father's signature tone. She reminded Damien that he was a son of nobility, not some drifter who should be fighting with kitchen utensils. That small reenactment caught Damien off guard. He trembled slightly, staring at her. For a brief second, he swore he could see their father in her face. He raised the sword from its sheath and held it high. The polished metal gleamed with power, the glow unmistakable. It was the real deal. He whispered a quiet thank you. Coincidentally, the Viscount was in the storeroom at that very moment, sneezing repeatedly. He wondered aloud if someone was talking about him. Perhaps the old adage about sneezing when your name is mentioned was more than superstition. Later that night, at House Huxon's estate, the sky had gone dark. 2 guards stood silently at the mansion gate. One yawned heavily, earning a light scolding from the other, who teased that his jaw might rip open if he kept that up. But their banter was short-lived. A thick, creeping energy began to crawl across the ground, dark and unnatural. It coiled around their ankles, then rose to their heads. And just like that, both guards collapsed. Whether dead or merely unconscious was unclear. From within the seeping darkness, a lone figure emerged, wreathed in shadow. The gates creaked open at its approach. The mansion doors followed. The intruder glided soundlessly into the home of House Huxon. The figure passed through the halls like a phantom, slipping room to room without pause, first into Abel's chamber, then the Viscount and Countess's, and finally into the room where Louise lay fast asleep. As the intruder stepped closer, his face became visible under the moonlight, a man with a wild grin and twisted gaze. He gazed upon Louise with wicked amusement. She was far more beautiful than he expected. His mission had come from the Black Snake faction. But now, seeing her here, he considered it a fortunate bonus. He crouched beside her bed, intent on taking his time, when suddenly, a voice stopped him cold. It was Damien. He stood behind the man, asking what exactly he was doing in his sister's room. The intruder said nothing. Damien noted the strange energy. He had sensed something was wrong the moment it emerged, and now it made sense. He could feel the disruption in the house's flow. This man was the source. The intruder's eyes narrowed. He clenched his teeth. Internally, he was panicking. His spell should have affected everyone. No one in the mansion should have been awake. More than that, he hadn't even sensed Damien's approach. Without wasting time, he attacked. Explosive magic burst from his hand, firing toward Damien like a cannon. The ground cracked, and furniture shattered on impact. But Damien dodged, slipping through the attack lines with precise movement. The intruder was stunned. He demanded to know who Damien was. No ordinary person should have survived that. But Damien, unfazed, pointed out that this was his house. The better question was, who was he and what was he planning to do to Louise? Outside, the distant voices of guards echoed through the hallway. One of them shouted that they'd heard something, coming from Lady Louise's room. The intruder's expression twisted with frustration. The blast had given him away. He hadn't expected such a setback. Servants and knights would be on the scene in seconds. His mission was now compromised. He began casting another spell, this time to disappear. He muttered to himself that it would be too dangerous to stay if others saw him. In a ripple of shadows, his form melted and twisted, slipping out the window into the night. Damien rushed forward, calling for him to stop, but it was already too late. The intruder zigzagged through the bushes, vanishing beneath the cover of darkness. Damien was still fuming, questioning whether the intruder had truly escaped. But just as doubt crept in, his eyes landed on a faint residue near the doorframe. A trace, subtle but unmistakable. The very same energy that had clung to the room when the dark figure vanished. He didn't need further confirmation. He knew this aura. The next morning, chaos broke out in the horse stable. One of the servants was yelling in panic. The prized horse of House Hoxton had died overnight, and there was no explanation for it. The other servant confirmed the confusion. The animal had been perfectly healthy just yesterday. Before the conversation could spiral further, Damien appeared, arriving unannounced at the stable. He admitted that he had a bad feeling earlier, and now that feeling had become reality. The two servants froze in shock. Fear immediately overtook them. They assumed Damien had come to report them to the Viscount. Their voices cracked as they tried to defend themselves, claiming the horse had simply collapsed. But Damien quickly calmed them. He had no intention of placing blame. He only came to verify something. For that, he needed them to leave. He required the space alone. Once they left, Damien knelt by the dead horse and placed a hand on its body. That same cursed residue lingered. The aura was unmistakable. This was dark magic. Corrupt, unstable, and unnatural. There was no longer any doubt. The man who had invaded House Hoxton was a dark mage. Damien returned to the mansion. His family was still blissfully unaware of the night's events and the death in the stables. For now, he saw no reason to alarm them. Elsewhere, in a secluded underground chamber riddled with old stone and moss, the black-robed figure was at work. The same man who had infiltrated the Hoxton estate. He cackled as he sorted through ingredients, magical relics, cursed herbs, and glowing essence pooled in a bowl. He muttered about the success of his mission. The Black Snake boss had delivered everything requested, not just curse ingredients, but far more than expected. He smirked at the surplus. With these materials, he wouldn't need to restock for quite a while. Still, the Dark Mage sighed. Jobs like these, messy, small-scale work, were beneath him. But with the court enforcers still tracking his whereabouts, laying low was the only option. Or so he thought. Footsteps echoed behind him. Before he could react, Damien was already in the room. Damien commented on the stench. The air was so thick with death and rot, he joked that perhaps old men like this should remember to ventilate once in a while. The dark mage spun around, stunned. He recognized Damien immediately. The heir of House Hoxton. The same boy who had nearly caught him the night before. He stammered, still trying to comprehend how Damien had found him. Damien explained it casually. He had simply followed the stench of corrupted mana. The trail had led him straight here. The dark mage was amazed. This wasn't some noble brat after all. He had heard rumors that Damien had clashed with the Black Snake faction, but he hadn't believed them. Now he saw the truth for himself. Damien deduced aloud that the dark mage was likely one of the Black Snake's hirelings, sent to hurt House Hoxton directly. The dark mage confirmed it without shame. That had been his directive. Damien, unmoved, replied that it was pathetic. Of all things, he had taken a job to harm innocent people. And for that choice, death was inevitable. Fury surged through the dark mage. His pride couldn't bear being spoken to this way. He lifted his hand, gathering volatile energy, and declared that Damien was an interesting specimen, one worth torturing and keeping around for entertainment. But Damien didn't flinch. He stated clearly that while he had made a vow not to kill unless necessary, there was one clear exception: dark mages like this one. The dark mage's confidence shattered. He hadn't expected Damien to uncover his identity so easily. Now he realized he couldn't allow Damien to leave. His cover was at risk, and House Haksen now knew too much. He launched an immediate attack, a barrage of talismanic spells fired toward Damien with deadly precision. But Damien was faster. With a flash of movement, he evaded every spell, weaving through the blasts with razor-sharp instincts. In an instant, he was in front of the dark mage. There was no hesitation. Damien found the opening and struck. The blade tore through flesh and bone, cleaving the dark mage in two. Dark energy seeped out from the weird guy's mangled body, veiling his form in a heavy mist. The corruption swirled around his face, and yet, from beneath the blackened haze came laughter, twisted, gleeful, and maddening. Damien stiffened. Despite the earlier blow that should have ended the fight, he realized now that the weird guy's body was regenerating. Piece by piece, the split flesh mended itself as the corrupted aura intensified. This was the same power Damien had sensed back at the Haksen estate, controlled, honed, and deeply dangerous. Far too skilled for someone taking on such a low-level assignment. The weird guy cackled and mocked the idea that Damien's earlier strike would be enough. But before he could gloat further, Damien surged forward again. He increased his speed to 60% and struck from all angles. Blades sliced the air. Dust scattered. The walls trembled. But the weird guy still stood. He laughed again, commending Damien's skill. It explained the confidence he had shown walking into the lair alone. But now, he declared, it was already too late. Suddenly, several tendrils of dark energy erupted from the walls, seizing Damien's wrist. Then another latched onto his ankle. Until a dozen shadowy creatures had emerged, each with twisted limbs and reeking with decay. Their auras were repulsive, their movements unnatural. The weird guy smirked as he revealed the truth. The entire room had been layered with enchantments. It was a trap prepared long in advance in case the court's pursuers found him. But now, it had caught someone else. Damien realized just how dangerous this was. If this dragged out any longer, he could be overwhelmed. The weird guy grinned wildly and proclaimed that Damien should begin his descent into madness. The creatures were already tearing at him, wrapping around his body like a cocoon. His vision blurred, the ghouls latched onto his face and limbs, chewing and clawing. Moments later, Damien was completely enclosed, sealed in a pulsating cocoon of shadow. The weird guy stood tall, now fully regenerated, laughing like a madman. He declared that Damien was a fool, too arrogant, too reckless. And now, the price was his life. He recalled what the Black Snake's leader had instructed: do whatever it takes to cripple the Haksen family. Technically, he had fulfilled that mission, at least in his mind. Smiling with sick satisfaction, he muttered that now the real prize awaited, that woman he had seen at the Haksen estate. Louise, Damien's sister. He began murmuring to himself, describing the corrosive curse he would craft to kill her. Something slow, something cruel. But before the thought could complete itself, a sound cracked through the silence. Movement. From within the cocoon. The weird guy turned, confusion clouding his face, only to see Damien breaking free. The cocoon shattered in all directions as if detonated from within. And there stood Damien, completely unharmed. The weird guy froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He demanded to know how Damien had survived. No ordinary person could escape that kind of containment. That cocoon had absorbed knights, mages, even bounty hunters. But Damien gave no answer. Instead, he stared at his hand. There it was again, the mark, a symbol glowing faintly. The authority of the gods. Even Damien was surprised. He hadn't expected it to awaken again. Not in this life, not after the regression. Back then, his master had been a true lich, a monstrous mage whose obsession with power knew no end. That day, the lich had begun his most reckless spell. He had looked at Damien, his finest creation, and declared him the ultimate sword, a vessel of evil and wrath. Yet even that had not satisfied the lich. He had wanted more. So, he chose to bestow a final gift. He drove a ceremonial sword into his own hand and began to chant, funneling unspeakable energy into Damien. A power even the lich called forbidden, one said to originate from the gods themselves. As the spell surged, lightning danced across Damien's bones. His skeletal frame screamed in agony as a flood of mana overwhelmed him. Even the Lich was pushed back, struggling to maintain control. And then, something changed. The energy ruptured, not in destruction but in transcendence. It shattered into particles of divine dust and was absorbed fully into Damien's being. The spell was complete, and with it came the authority of the gods. The Lich had stood frozen, whispering in awe that it was finally his. A divine force fused into the vessel of a Death Knight,